Now, cancer, no laughing matter, but you can laugh at it. Who am I to talk? Well, no one. So let's talk to somebody who's more than qualified. Deborah Dave, who's on the show now, live with us.
From a shocking cancer diagnosis 3 years ago to recently being declared cancer-free, our next guest has one hell of a story to tell. She's donning lycra and running the Virgin Money London Marathon, for the Royal Marsden Hospital Charity. And here to tell her remarkable story is the wonderful force of nature, Deborah James.
Morning, Deborah.
Oh, thank you. What an introduction.
How are
Can
you
I
today?
just say, I am good today, thank you. Thank you for having me here.
You're more than welcome. All right, so for people who don't know your story, your potted history of you and cancer goes like this.
Like this. 3 years ago, diagnosed with bowel cancer at the age of 35. And well, ever since then, I very much document what it's like to live with cancer.
Yep.
I shouldn't be here.
Yep.
And the reality is, so by the time I was diagnosed, I have metastatic bowel cancer. So it was already in my liver, my lungs. I've had lots of operations. I've got bits of my lung missing, bits of my bowel missing, like you name it. But for me, I'm still, well, now I'm 38. I can't believe I can say that. It's amazing. And statistically, we know, sadly, when cancer's caught late, the chances of survival kind of plummet. So for me, I just wanted to carry on living as much as I could. So I pretend to call myself Bowel Babe, not because I think I'm hot or anything, essentially because she's way cooler than me, and I can hide behind her, I think, a little bit sometimes. And then I just wanted to get busy living. You know, why not? Life is too short. And I know that sounds really cheesy, but we have to, don't we?
It doesn't sound, nothing sounds cheesy coming from you, Deborah, at all. And so I read Bryony's column a couple of weeks ago, which is why I talked to you about on the radio last week. And Bryony's a friend of yours.
Yeah.
I know that. And you're going to run the London Marathon, which is just the best news ever. And I can't wait to just hold your hand for a bit of it if you would allow that.
Yes, please. It's bonkers. I'm already scared.
But, you know, in the article that Bryony wrote a couple of weekends ago, she said you're now cancer-free. What does that mean?
That's a really good question, actually. So on paper, I have gone from somebody who had about 15 tumours all around their body at various different points. I call it a game of splat the tumour. I have to laugh, otherwise I would cry at it. Yeah. And we finally, because of targeted drugs, lots of operations, we've got into a place where I had a scan, lots of different scans and tests a couple of weeks ago, and I was not given the words, you are cancer-free. I have no evidence of cancer in my body.
Right.
Which is quite amazing. But I'm fully aware, statistically, only around 8% of people will survive with what I have. But, you know, the way that we're moving forward with research,
Yep.
I want to give people hope. I hope that the fact that I shouldn't be living today gives people hope. I don't know what the future holds. But, you know, my oncologist says one step at a time.
Yeah, one day at a time, one second at a time. Almost.
Absolutely, and that's all we can do, right? We can only take it one step at a time. So when I leave here, I'm going back into hospital. I'm still on my drugs. I still have to take those drugs because they keep me alive.
Yep.
And at some point, they'll probably run out. At some point, another tumour might appear. But until then, I suppose it's just business as usual.
Because I saw you last year. Was it on Stand Up to Cancer?
Yeah, I was on Stand Up.
You know, and my wife watched it at home, and we couldn't believe how upbeat you were. We were incredulous at your positivity, because one thing to say, be positive, another thing to be positive, especially in such adverse conditions or facing the challenges that you're facing. What is your life like? Who are you surrounded by? How is your day-to-day existence?
So my life is, I try to make it as normal as possible, but I think cancer always gets in the way sometimes, and I try to be like, I'm in charge. But the reality of if I don't put my health first, actually, I wouldn't be here. I'm surrounded by love. Honestly, I'm surrounded by people who get me through the darkest of times. And I am positive, but I would say at 3 o'clock in the morning, there are people that see me in a very different side. Yeah. And, you know, we have to acknowledge both sides. And, you know, if somebody might be listening today, there's 1,000 people in the UK today who have been told you have cancer. And I guarantee you, they probably don't know how to put one foot in front of the other. And they're probably sitting there going, I can't be positive. I don't know what to do. Yeah. And it is hard. Like, I'm not going to lie, it's hard, but it's a roller coaster. And I just talk about it as kind of, I'm firmly strapped in and I'm riding it.
So how can they begin? What's the first step to being positive when you hear such horrible news?
Yeah, I think it's never assume the worst.
Right.
If I assume the worst, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And don't look at the statistics, or look at them and then park it.
Right.
Because the reality is that on paper, like I keep on saying, I shouldn't be here, but there are other people who should be here. I've lost people along the way, friends and colleagues. Literally coming in today to the radio show, I was told yes again about somebody else diagnosed after me. They should be here and they're not.
Right.
And your cancer's your cancer, but also just look for examples of the fact that ask people around you to treat you as normal, to be as normal as you can. Don't wrap yourself in cotton wool unless you want to. If you don't want to get out of bed, that's fine. But go down the pub, go to the cinema. You know, if you feel like putting some makeup on, do that.
Right, now, congratulations on your first 10-mile run in prep for the Virgin Money London Marathon, which took place at the weekend. Now, you made it to 10 miles, and then what happened?
Oh, my word. I then thought, what on earth have I done?
So you sat down on a bench?
I sat on a bench. So I got to 10 miles. It took about just over 2 hours for me to do that. I literally I couldn't move. I then sat on a bench and I cried. And I thought, I can't move. And then I was saying to Vassos outside, I was just saying that I have to do that another 3 times. Well, nearly more.
2.5.
2.5.
Well, it's
2.6.
about 27, 28 in the end,
I kid you not, I nearly had to crawl home. I crawled into Starbucks and I basically was just like, I basically cried like tears onto the counter. As I was like, I need chocolate.
Did you treat yourself to some chocolate?
Yeah, like those marshmallow sticks, everything.
And so how do you know Bryony? How did you get to know Bryony Gordon, who's run the marathon a couple of times already?
Mainly online, actually. And Bryony being Bryony was like, I want to be friends with you. I was like, I want to be friends with you. And both of us, actually. So somebody said, how do you mentally cope with cancer? And exercise, for me, is the way that I cope. So exercise is honestly, so running, albeit, for me, it's basically the speed of walking, is the only time that I actually feel free. That sounds very strange, but, whether I'm in a hospital or whatever it might be, I put my running trainers on and running along that river is the only time where I don't have any worries in my life. And I met Bryony because she uses running as well, very much kind of to support her positive,
she talks about mental health
mental
a
health.
lot, doesn't she?
And for me, it's, cancer, unfortunately, runs alongside a lot of mental health issues. So you have more people having anxiety, depression, and totally understandably so. You've got all these things happening to your body. And there's this kind of misconception we need to wrap ourselves in cotton wool. And actually, we now know exercise is really positive in terms of our outcomes.
Yeah.
So actually, getting our running trainers on, as hard as it might be, not every day, is great for us. And
isn't it funny? Because every I think this is right, may not be, but every health challenge always ends up ultimately as a mental challenge, doesn't it? Because it's how you cope with it, how you accept it, how you don't accept it, how you live in denial of it, and how the decisions you make within a condition you can't change. Because you can change your decisions, but you may not be able to change the conditions.
Absolutely. You can change the way you handle it. You can change your attitude towards it. So don't get me wrong, when I was first diagnosed, and still now, whenever it reoccurs, you get really angry and you get really bitter at the situation. But I can't change it. I can't take those tumours out. I have to hope that I respond to treatment. But you're perfectly right. And I learned this actually from my late colleague, Rachel, who faced her death with such incredible strength.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I would ever do that. But you can change the outcomes and the impact that can have is enormous. The ripples are huge.
And Rachel's husband, Steve, sometimes hosts the podcast now, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. He's officially a member, and it's great to have that other perspective, actually, of the kind of the partner, the carer who's been through it, and then what life looks like afterwards as well. Because life goes on, right? And we have to acknowledge that has its challenges as well.
It's a relay race, isn't it? We pass it from one to another whenever it happens. The baton is always, thankfully, goes into the future. So you've cracked your 10 miles. You ended up in tears. You were craving chocolate. You thought this isn't going to happen. 26th of April. When's the next big run?
So I'm going to do another one at the weekends because my challenge is that I'm still on daily treatment, and with that comes the side effects of a body that basically is full of scar tissue from all my operations. I know loads of people have their challenges, but also the side effects of.
You're allowed to say. You keep excusing yourself.
But also a body that really hurts. Unfortunately, I sound like I'm complaining. So I have to manage like getting strong versus the running. So I'm only going to do one long run each week. But I think I might also try to do like the whole walk run thing in terms of impact. I just want to turn up. You know what, for me, I've never had 4 months for the last, 3 and a bit years where I've never not had an operation or not had some kind of change of plan where I've ended up in hospital.
Well,
for
you're
a
really,
month.
I mean, you're planning for the future, you know, almost with like somebody who doesn't suffer from something as serious as you are suffering from now. And you haven't probably done that since you were originally diagnosed.
Never. So I have not put anything in my diary beyond 2 weeks in the last 3 years.
So this is the first thing.
This is the first
what a
thing.
thing.
Yeah.
You don't mess
I
about,
know,
do you?
but I now feel the pressure.
You could have said like Alton Towers, March the 27th. No, London Marathon, April the 26th.
But somebody said, why run? And I said, because I can. Not very fast, but there's so many people who can't. And they want to. So, and also, you know, for me, it's about giving back too. So I'm doing it for my hospital because they're keeping me alive.
So how can people donate to your page? Or
Oh, thank you. So I go under Bell Babe. So on Twitter and Instagram, you can mainly see me like laughing, trying to laugh or cry as I run. And on there's a link. So I've put my link to my donation on there.
do you feel a sense of responsibility, and do you feel like you have to smile for those who can't?
I feel a sense of responsibility to make the most of my life because I know there are so many people who wish that they could be sitting here now. So that's the pressure that I feel, but I don't feel it's too much pressure. I feel it's a privilege, actually, to be honest with you.
And what can you say to us lot who really haven't got not a real worry in the world? What can you give us? Can you knock our heads together collectively, please?
It's so hard, isn't it? Don't worry about what might be because it's not ever going to be what you think. It's never going to be what you think. And it's always the blindsided moments, isn't it? It's when you are blindsided and you suddenly go, okay, fine. That's what I need to do in life, or whatever it might be. And the reality, you have to do what makes you happy and don't beat yourself up about that.
Yeah. I love Churchill. What Churchill said, he said, if you go through hell, keep going. And then if you get through hell, just remember that you're no longer in hell. But it's waiting for you around the corner, so make the most of every second. John in North Wales says, I'm sitting here listening to such an inspirational, upbeat lady. We've all been affected one way or another by cancer, but you put it across in such a positive way. How can we sponsor you the London Marathon? So one more time.
Oh, thank you so much. Bowel Babe. So, you know, bowel cancer, raise awareness of bowel cancer. Second biggest killer in the UK, but I call myself Bowel Babe. So on all forms of social media, if you go to Twitter or Instagram, you will see the link to my fundraising there. Thank you so much in advance.
Right, if you want to keep coming in between now and the marathon, if you want to, if you can, if you're able to, if you can fit us in and give us updates on anything you damn well like, that chair is yours now.
Yes,
okay, that is
it's
your
mine.
chair. That belongs to Deborah James and nobody else until she says so.
The Chris Evans Breakfast Show with Sky.